Welcome to this week's podcast episode. I have brought on Robin Choe. Robin, welcome.
Thank you, Heather, for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, so I appreciate the time that you've given me here.
Robin and I actually met on an online Facebook group through Lewis Howe's School of Greatness Academy, and he's also a fellow entrepreneur, has his own podcast. But the reason I brought on Robin, we had a side conversation. We got to chatting, just learning about each other's backgrounds and where we're at today. But I loved how he has come up with what he calls a happiness quadrant.
Yeah, it's called the HQ for short.
Yeah, but I guess before we dive into that, can you give a little background? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm from Toronto, Canada. I'm Canadian. I was born and raised here, and as you can see, but I have South Korean roots, so my parents are from South Korea. And we had a pretty, you know, it was a regular immigrant growing like upbringing. I mean, my parents had a convenience store. I was always around business and just the hustle bustle of all of that. And but my parents wanted me to have like a normal life, so they're like, go to school, so I grew up doing all the Canadian stuff, playing hockey, playing sports, and it kind of my life kind of took a different road. I got injured and playing hockey, and then so I started to have to think about other options because I honestly thought I was going to be a hockey player. And so after that, I just had to explore other options, and then became a realtor. Did real estate for a bit, and then I started my own flipping company. Both failures, and decided that I need, things needed to change. So in a nutshell, that's how I found the School of Greatness, and that's where I took the course with Lewis, and really found what it was that I was trying to do, and all the things that I was trying to accomplish in my life, all the way up until this point. So I got married and I got divorced, and it was a very painful time for me. And I just started writing. And so that's kind of where the HQ comes into play. That's what I wrote. It's called the Happiness Quadrant. Yeah, the HQ, and it's just 4 areas of our life that we need to pay specific attention to. I had to come across this because I was in a very dark place. I guess I wasn't happy, and I wanted to know how to be happy. So I started to write a lot, and I realized I was kind of reaching out to guys like me, who's just been through a divorce, kind of just really trying to regather themselves and rebuild the foundation that they once lost. And so that's what that was, and that's what I'm doing now. Is just I'm kind of just shining the light on any guy that's kind of been through their divorce. And there's this whole thing about vulnerability and toxic masculinity and all these kinds of hot new topics and buzzwords around men. I thought it would be a perfect time to launch a consulting and coaching business based around helping men, right, get vulnerable. So that's kind of where I'm at now. There's obviously a lot of stuff I've left out just for the sake, but I mean, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
So when you got to that dark point, and although I didn't go through a divorce and I don't have children, I did end an engagement, and for me, it was like a divorce and quite possibly my rock bottom. But when you were in that dark period of your life, what emotions were you going through?
So I was very bitter, extremely angry. Like, how could this have happened to me? Um, Now my life is ruined. What am I going to do now? So I was I was in an angry state of mind, and it was very toxic to the people around me. It's very toxic to myself as well because I was, self-medicating with alcohol or whatever, and kind of just trying to separate my emotions from who I really was. And until it was, I realized that I needed to stop turning away from my problems and start turning into them. I started realizing that there was a lot of power to be had from there, but it was a struggle. It wasn't easy. I mean, my ego was, we talked about this, and my ego was just completely in the way where it was just ruining my relationships. It was ruining just my business, not to mention, right? Like I talked about my failed businesses. So when I had this ego and I realized that, the only way to be really happy is to drop the ego and then create new ways to think, because your ego has created a way for us to, kind of hide behind the surface, so to say. Um, and if we are not learning new ways and trying to coax our ego out of our minds, then we're just going to constantly run into the same problem. So there's a high chance of people who divorce, get remarried and then they get divorced, and then that's because a lot of people haven't really figured out the foundation stuff yet. And yeah, that's what the HQ is, and it's just what I'm trying to promote here.
So
It's just this awareness.
can you dive into the quadrant? You told me that the four quadrants are relationships, health, wealth, and growth. So can you talk a little bit about each one of those areas?
Yeah, so relationships is our biggest. Okay, so first let's back up. Each quadrant, you have to view it like a bank account, like an emotional bank account, something that you got to make deposits into every single day. And I got this theory from Stephen Covey when he talks about emotional bank accounts and making deposits into them. So that's what we have to view each quadrant as. So in the relationship category, that's where we're going to spend most of our time. This is where a lot of the heartaches and the real tricky stuff gets in the way. So relationships, you have to understand that you're going to spend a lot of time here. About 60 to 70% of your day is spent in just your relationships, right? And this is including yourself and the one that you have with your spiritual power, whoever, your being, God, for me, whoever it is, right? All these relationships exist in this quadrant. And so, like I said, 60 to 70% of your day is going to be spent adding into this quadrant. So your health, obviously, that doesn't take a back seat ever. Every morning, I make sure that I do something, for my health, whether it be drink a glass of water or I'm doing fasting nowadays. So I make sure I drink this ginger and turmeric tea in the morning with some healthy fats just to feed my brain. So these are the kinds of things that you can make deposits in every single day. It's not something that ever takes a back seat, and it's just incorporated into your daily routine. Your wealth is your business, your money, the cash flow, like the physical the money, right? Because if you're not paying attention to that, you're really not paying attention to everything. I realized that when I was growing up, a lot of people would be like, "Oh, money is the root of all evil," yada yada yada. I truly believe that money isn't the root of all evil. There's nowhere in the Bible that they talk about where Jesus or God doesn't have or want us to have abundance in our life. Everything is about being abundant, having a filled and fulfilled life. And so I really had to change the way excuse me, sorry, the sound's cutting off a little bit, but I really had to change the way I think about money. So I knew that this was an area of my life I needed to pay specific attention to. So every day I'm making deposits into my wealth depending on what my business is looking like that day. But it's a constant area of focus that you're going to have to add into your daily routine. The last is your growth. It's who are you helping? Because a lot of people, they start businesses and they develop great relationships. I get it, but they're not contributing to anything. This is like one of the missing components to a lot of people's areas in life, and you have to really, really start to ask yourself, like, who am I helping? Who am I serving? Who can I serve today? Whether it be a random act of kindness or if it's just somebody like your client, like how can you give value to that person today? So this isn't just the be all end all of everything. It's just a foundational way of thinking. And we talked about heart-centered approaches, losing the ego, right? So my happiness quadrant has a huge heart in the middle. You could probably show the link of what it actually looks like. But there's a heart in the middle, and that's because it's a heart-centered approach. You cannot attack any of these quadrants without love. Like you try going into your relationships without love. Like go into your health without love. Go into your business without love, or go into helping others without love. Like doesn't work. So you truly, truly, it's a heart-centered approach. It's based around really, really, developing yourself. So one of the main things that I teach is self-awareness and self self-preservation and self-care, because it helps you show up in all the other areas of your life, right? And it'll just add to your confidence, and just everything goes up after that. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's amazing. And actually, so from our previous conversation, I had drawn a quadrant, but as you were speaking that, I actually drew a big heart embracing the quadrant since you said everything involves love. And I think that's amazing because it does.
It's truly, I mean, I looked at this quadrant before without the love aspect of it, and it just didn't work. I mean,
Mhm.
because in my mind, there was a little bit of a separation in terms of the money thing, because in business, you have to be kind of like cutthroat and ruthless. That's what I used to think, right? In order, because everyone's going to be coming after you, especially in business. People are going to be coming down your throat. It's true. So you kind of had to separate yourself from the love aspect of, because you got to view your enemies as your enemies, and so on and so forth. So I didn't really, you know, include the whole love aspect into this quadrant until at the end when my business was failing, and my business was not being, because I was constantly like ego, I told you, and always scared, I guess, of people taking my ideas, or um, or coming after my own clients, or whatever. I mean, it's just, regardless. I mean, if you're not coming at it with that kind of mentality of love, and knowing that the world is abundant, and even if they do come after you, it's whatever. The world is just, there's so much of it to go around, that you shouldn't really be too concerned with that. So yeah.
I think it's amazing. And obviously, for me, from the outside looking in, it seems like this is the silver lining from ending your relationship. Maybe that was your rock bottom, and you had to go through that turmoil and bitterness and anger and resentment to come out this shining light, creating this love filled, abundant, and spreading that message to others. But I want to ask you, what did it feel like back then versus now? What are your emotional states? How do you feel lighter? Are you excited? Is it your energy? Like, how is it?
So everything is clear. I'm going to share a story with you guys, because it's just a great way to kind of hammer this point across. But my car was broken into, I think it was like a couple of weekends ago. I was in a pretty grimy area of Toronto. I shouldn't have left my car unlocked. Knowing me, I'm just like, oh, I'm only going to have dinner. I'll be back. No one's going to go into my car or anything. I don't really keep anything valuable in there anyway. But when I got back from dinner, and I realized all my stuff is thrown everywhere, and my car flipped upside down. I looked back. The first thing I saw was this book. I have two books. There's Lewis Howes's Mask of Masculinity, and Evan Carmichael's 10 Secrets to Success. And that book was literally just gifted to me that day by somebody who I'd met. My really close friend now, Tuan, he had given that book to me, and I just remember looking back at it and saying, I don't even care what's lost. You know why? Because those two books are gonna probably make me more money than anything that I've lost. But not only that, I was what the point of the story was is the space that I get, the clarity, and the space, the gap, before I react. So normally my old self would get very, very angry and start throwing fat to the fire, and doing and saying all these things that won't contribute to really anything. So I had to give myself that space, and then right away I was grateful that the books were there, and that I didn't care what was lost. And it's like, whatever. And my friends come by and they're like, okay, where's the next spot? I'm like, okay, let's go over here. It was a complete, like, instead of really harping on the situation, I had the compassion. I was filled with compassion, because I wrote this little thing on my Instagram story. I said, you know what, to the guy, whoever who broke into my car, I hope you got what you found. And honestly, I'm sending all my positive vibes to you, because I really want something good to happen to you, so that you don't ever get put in this situation ever again, right? And it was just that's not like me. But like I said, everything that I've been doing, since I've devised this like way of like thinking, and it's created this mentality for me where I'm just super grateful for everything, just to be alive and like like all these little things that don't even matter. I mean, it's not to say it doesn't matter. It matters. But when something bad happens, it really shouldn't affect you, right? And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah.
When I used to work in corporate, I had a big marker board in my office and it was written huge at the top. So I saw it every day. And it said, have an attitude of gratitude. And that's totally the way to live. So go
I
you.
love it. Yeah, I love it.
I want to wrap this up. At the end of each of my interviews, I like to do rapid fire questions. I got this from Dale. But what I want to ask,
Shout out to Dale.
hey, Dale, what I want to ask you is what is a quote or motto that you live by?
Okay, so I have this one written on my board all the time. It's something that I look at every single time, and it's easy choices, hard life, hard life. Sorry, hard choices, easy life. Because we're always thinking that it's. Did you hear me?
Yeah, no, my mind
Okay.
is blown because
So,
I opened a book this morning and that quote, mind is blown right now. Go ahead.
I mean, these little instances of the universe. This is just a tangent. These little instances of the universe is it means something. It's just like, anyways. That quote for me is one of the most powerful because I know that through everything that I've made, all these choices that I've made that were very, very difficult, it's going to grant me that easy life later on. And that's just how I view it. And I look at challenges now as that's going to get me over that next hump. I'm like waiting for these next difficult challenges now and these difficult decisions and things now. Like I'm actually seeking them out now. So it went from this like really, really like introverted dude to just now all about bouncing off people's energy and just embracing and accepting it. So,
That's awesome. What is a book you are currently reading?
so the book that I'm currently reading, here, let me just get it for you guys. And it's my second time reading it again, but it's called Letting Go. It's written by David R. Hawkins. He's a medical MD, but it's just it's so great because it gives you a way to look at all your emotions. So he stacks your emotions up, and from joy all the way to anger, and he ranks them in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at it, and I see that anger and depression and those kinds of emotions are ranked at like 0 out of 1,000, I'm not adding any happiness points to my life. And I feel like if this is a game that I'm playing, I'm rather going for the joy and the glow and those types of emotions as opposed to the lower ones. So it's great. It's just a great refresher for me. I think everyone and anybody who's going through a really hard time can definitely read this and relate to how to let go. Let go of the past and the hurt and things like that. So.
And on a final note, what is one piece of advice that you want to leave listeners maybe going through a dark period right now?
Reach out. Don't turn inward and try to solve the problem yourself. Seriously ask for other opinions and really get the insight from other people who love you, who care for you. Because if you don't, you're going to get really dark and you're going to get stuck in your way, and it's going to be hard for you to move forward and make the decisions that's going to better your life. And so, really, really, just reach out to the ones that you love and ask them for support. That's the best thing I can say to anyone going through a dark time. So,
Awesome. Robin, thank you so much for joining me today, and I appreciate your time.
yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you, Heather.